Hello everybody, this is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop. In case you're ever hearing any noise in the background, that's coming from my AC. We just recently installed it. It's been getting hot around here, so forgive any background noise that you'll hear while I'm talking. But yes, I did take a week-long vacation away from videos. I went out to Boston last week, that's why I didn't make any videos last week. And for those of you guys who did see the Phil and Friends episode, the recent Phil and Friends episode, where Tonto mentioned that they went to Massachusetts. Yeah, that's actually what happened to me. So, just to let you guys know what I was doing, while I wasn't making any videos. Now, the other thing I want to talk about before I get onto the actual episode of It Came From England, which, by the way, you guys can go to this timestamp right there. If you don't want to hear about this update stuff and just want to see the episode, I'll just leave the timestamp right there. So, in regards to the Dalek 44 Q&A episode I have planned, I announced this in one of my earlier episodes earlier this month, and yeah, it's been on hold for a little bit. I'm still waiting on Dalek 44's footage for the video, so I'm patiently waiting. No need to rush him. Although, personally, I do hope he gets it to me before summer, because I recently got accepted into a college recently, an art college, so I can go for my Bachelor of Arts degree. And, yeah, the reason why I said I hope he gives it to me before summer is because for whatever reason, I actually have to stay on campus during my first year there, which is... I don't know why I have to, but that's what I gotta do. Not 100% sure if I will actually go to that college or not. I'll have to see once I take a visit there, but yeah, just letting you guys know, as soon as I go off to college, videos will probably be coming out less often. I'll have to see how things go in the future, but anyways, I think that's all I gotta say. Dalek 44 Q&A will come out. I'm not going to say an official release date, so yeah, that's about it for this little update. Now on to the actual episode. Cue the music. That's right, everybody. I am going to be talking about TUGS for this episode of It Came From England. Now, some of you are probably wondering what TUGS is. TUGS was a short-lived British children's series that came out around 1989 on ITV. And for those of you people who know about Thomas and Friends, TUGS was actually made by David Mitton and Robert... How do you pronounce his last name? Cardona. Robert D. Cardona. I don't know if that's how his last name is actually pronounced, but let's go with it. If I'm wrong, feel free to let me know. That's whatever. So yeah, David Mitton and Robert were both known for making Thomas and Friends. David Mitton was the director of the classic series of Thomas and Friends, which, yes, I know, I forgot to mention that in my Thomas and Friends episode. But yeah, the series was made by them, and it was done in a very similar style to Thomas and Friends. They used models, and the models had like motorized eyes, and something that the characters of TUGS did that like the Thomas characters didn't do. The characters from TUGS moved their heads back and forth. So that's probably the one main difference between TUGS and Thomas, but there's actually a couple others. Another big difference between TUGS and Thomas and Friends is the runtime. Now, the first 7 seasons of Thomas, their episodes were like 4.5 minutes long. TUGS episodes were in between 15 to 20 minutes, which is close to being half an hour long. Or at least half of a half hour. Quarter of an hour? Yeah, there we go. That's quarter of an hour. Another thing that TUGS has that Thomas, for a long period of time, didn't have, up until, like, the show started to become CGI, that would be a voice cast. That's right. Long before Thomas started having a voice cast, TUGS had a voice cast. And they used models, just like I said. The characters from TUGS are models. So like I said before, TUGS was short-lived. It unfortunately only had 13 episodes. It was going to have more, but due to the bankruptcy of its development studio, Television South, it didn't have any more episodes. So the 13 episodes that you see now are the only ones in existence. So yeah. So it pretty much had the same amount of episodes as Mr. Bean, another I guess you kind of say short-lived series that I've covered on this channel. Mr. Bean pretty much had almost the same amount of episodes as TUGS did, so yeah. So now I'll get to the premise of the show along with the characters. So TUGS, in terms of the timeline, takes place in the 1920s in a fictional city called Big City Port. And the show stars two sets of TUGS that compete with each other at the Big City Port. The first one being the Starfleet, the main characters of the show, and I guess you could say the main protagonists. And there are 7 of them, and yeah, a majority of the episodes pretty much focus around them and what they do around the Big City Port. And I'll go in order by numbers for the Starfleet. So, first one is 10 Cents. He is pretty much the main character of TUGS, like the one star TUG they focus on the most. He's a young TUG. He's brave. He can be cheeky at times, quick-witted. Number 2 would be Big Mac, who is a stubborn TUG, but tends to have a heart of gold. And then there's OJ, an older TUG. There's Top Hats, a snotty and uppity TUG who literally has a top hat, hence his name. There's Warrior, a clumsy and dim-witted, strong member of the group. There's Hercules, who is pretty much like the main TUG. Like, and by main TUG, I mean like pretty much the one that like tells the others what to do. He's sort of the star TUG that the other TUGs look up to, pretty much. And then the last one is Sunshine, the smallest and probably youngest of the TUGs. Pretty much similar to 10 Cents, except he's a little more cheerful, and he often partners up with 10 Cents in a lot of the adventures. And all the star TUGs are pretty much controlled, or at least owned by a guy by the name of Captain Star, hence the name the Starfleet. He is an unseen owner who pretty much communicates with the TUGs through a megaphone from his office, and actually, he is the narrator of the series. He narrates the show in the past tense, so not only is he a character on the actual show, but he also is the narrator, so that's very interesting. And then the other group of TUGs that are often featured on the show are the Z-Stacks, or the Z-Stacks as they call it on the show, because TUGS is a British series, and like the 26th letter of the alphabet in the UK is referred to as Z. And I think every other country pretty much pronounces it as Z, or at least every other English country. We in America just call it the letter Z for some reason, but yeah, the Z-Stacks are the rivals of the Starfleets. Pretty much what they do on the show is trying to hinder or ruin the plans of the Star TUGs, pretty much trying to ruin what they're doing so that the Z-Stacks can be like the best of the Big City Port. First member of the Z-Stacks, and the most recurring one, sort of the leader of the group, but his name is Soren. He is pretty much the scheming, intelligent leader character. He is the one that comes up with most of the plans against the Starfleets, but normally is often overconfident with some of his schemes, and they all pretty much backfire on him. Next member would be Zebedee. He is what they would consider a pretty complex character. You know, he actually has conscience, unlike, other members of the Z-Stacks, despite, being pretty tough on the outside. And according to some sources, he was actually owned by Captain Star at one point, which would have been explained if the show had a season 2, but unfortunately that never happened, so we never really get to know what really goes on with Zebedee. Next member would be Zach. He's known for having a bad motor, is often partnered up with Zebedee. And then the last 2 members of the Z-Stacks are Zug and Zip, who often both partner up with one another. They're pretty small. Zug in particular is around the same size as Sunshine, pretty much. They both work as a pair. They often listen to Zoran and just carry out Zoran's plans to take care of the Starfleet. And just like how Captain Star is the owner of the Starfleet, the Z-Stacks are owned by Captain Zero. Unlike Captain Star, he is devious and scheming and actually worked with another villain on TUGS by the name of Johnny Cuba, a tramp steamer gangster pretty much. And as for other characters of the show, one of the few recurring ones is Izzy Gomez, who is another tramp steamer. He wears a sombrero and big mustache, and has a Mexican flag painted on his smokestack, and often would try to get into the big city ports without getting towed, or at least he states that he would rather get into there himself rather than being towed. Well, in one of the episodes, he actually does try to get in, but was unsuccessful. Now, in my opinion, Izzy Gomez, not Iggy Gomez, sort of. I don't want to make any assumptions here, but Izzy Gomez kind of reminds me of like the illegal immigrants that we often get here in the U.S. Like I said, it's an assumption, but I mean, I guess that would make sense because the big city port in TUGS actually takes place in America. So I don't know. I just kind of make that assumption. Don't call me a racist or anything, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that's what Izzy Gomez is supposed to be based off of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it seems to me. Now, the series has had other recurring characters besides Izzy Gomez, which I will cover. I'm not gonna cover all of them. I'm just gonna cover the ones that I remember the most, because I first saw this series like 6 years ago, and I haven't rewatched it since then, which some of you guys are probably gonna be like, "Oh, Tyler, you should have rewatched the series before doing an episode on this show." Well, sorry, okay? So, first recurring character besides the Starfleet and the Z-Stacks would be Lily Lightship. She is a lightship who is friends with the Starfleet. Then we have Blue Nose, a Navy tug who often annoys the Starfleet and the Z-Stacks for pretty much being bossy. Then there's Billy Shupek, an alligator tug. And then there's Boomer, who was from an episode called Jinxed, where 10 Cents and Sunshine were partnering up with him, and he often got into many incidents. This particular character, I believe, was the inspiration for a YouTuber in the Thomas community under the name The Unlucky Tug, which is, I guess, a nickname they gave for Boomer. Another minor character on TUGS under the name Big Mickey is the Big City Port's Huge Crane. He only appeared in 2 episodes of the show, but after TUGS got canceled, his model was later reused for Thomas and Friends throughout the show's entire run, both the live action, and he was even rendered into CGI, and then eventually by season 21 became an actual character on the show with a face and a voice. So Big Mickey definitely went on to have a big future. That was terrible. Now let's see, am I forgetting any? Am I forgetting anybody here? Let me double check it. Oh, geez. Okay, I forgot to talk about this character. Grampus. He is a submarine who previously worked for the Navy. Made a couple of appearances, often partners up with the Starfleet. And in one episode, actually becomes a part of the Starfleet. So he became like the, I guess, the unofficial 8th member of the Star Tugs, even though he's a submarine. But yeah, one interesting thing to note about Grampus that he often does in the show, he would often spit water at other characters, most notably Blue Nose and Top Hat. So yeah, Grampus definitely has, he's one of the memorable characters I would call on the show. You know, he has an interesting appearance, he's submarine. He also has a lisp in his voice. If you ever like watch any episodes of him, he has a lisp in his voice. And yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say about Grampus. So after the show's cancellation, nothing much else really came out of TUGS after it got canceled. All 13 episodes were made available on VHS. And then many years later, in 1997, the show finally, I guess you could technically say, got dubbed for the American dub, but let me tell you something right now about what happened to TUGS right here in the good old USA. Now, from what I've heard, TUGS itself, like, as the show was supposed to be released in America, but for whatever reason that never happened. But around 1997, a show from TLC under the name Salty's Lighthouse came in, and actually the show had segments featuring the characters from TUGS. But here's the difference between, you know, actual TUGS and then the TUGS from Salty's Lighthouse. The TUG segments in Salty's Lighthouse, it was pretty much the footage from the actual TUGS show, but it was like heavily edited, and the voices were dubbed, storylines were changed, and yeah, it was just, oh my god. And the TUGS segments for Salty's Lighthouse were made slightly more family-friendly because TUGS itself, like, while it was mostly intended for kids, it's definitely not on the same level as a children's show as Thomas and Friends is, which appeals to, like, a much younger demographic. Like, TUGS sort of appeals to, like, an older audience of children because it does feature some more storylines going in. There's actually have been a few explosions a couple of times on the show, so yeah, I wouldn't really say it's a show I would highly recommend for toddlers, but yeah. So they had to heavily edit TUGS out, like they had to get rid of anything that they wouldn't really consider to be family friendly out of it, and just made some new stuff, made TUGS more family friendly, I guess you could kind of say. Not only was the footage changed and the dialogue and the story changed, characters themselves have also changed when it comes to their names and their genders. In Salty's Lighthouse, Sunshine, Captain Star were made into females, and Big Mac was renamed Big Stag because I guess they were worried about getting copyrighted by McDonald's because of the Big Mac sandwich. OJ was renamed Otis, probably because of OJ Simpson. I thought that one was a little bit stupid too, but they're both kind of stupid. Zebedee was changed to ZB for unknown reasons, despite the fact that his name tag Zebedee is still seen in the footage that they made for, or that they re-edited for Salty's Lighthouse. And now I'll talk about one of the stupidest changes that they've done to TUGS for Salty's Lighthouse. The Star Tugs and the Z-Stacks are good guys on Salty's Lighthouse. Like, what's even the point? Where's the conflict? And the other one, which I thought was kind of stupid, there were two other characters on TUGS I forgot to mention. They were very minor. They only appeared in like one episode, where they were scrap dealers and they tried to convince Captain Star to sell OJ for scrap. But in Salty's Lighthouse, instead of being scrap dealers, they're movie producers under the names Mr. Baffo and Mr. Sacco. Movie director tugboats. What? That's pretty much all I gotta say about Salty's Lighthouse. For those of you who want to get started on watching Tugs, I would not suggest starting off with the Salty's Lighthouse episodes. Watch the original series. It's definitely way better. I mean, even though I haven't seen it in like 6 years, but like, it's definitely way better. There's more of a story, there's conflict, action. Definitely watch the original Tugs series. It's worth the watch. And you know, I might as well talk about, I forgot to mention, the music for Tugs was done by Mike and Jr. That's why the same guys that did the music for the classic series of Thomas and Friends. And yeah, that's about it. David Mitton, the co-creator of Tugs, of course later went on to go back to working on Thomas and Friends once the show came back for its 3rd season. Robert Cardona didn't come back to Thomas and Friends. However, he did make a similar show to Tugs under the name Theodore Tugboat in Canada. So, yeah, so Cardona's had quite a history with Tugs, I'll tell you that. But that is about it for this episode of It Came From England. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give the video a like. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more episodes or just mediocre plush content in general. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. That is about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out. And the next episode won't be the Dalek 44 Q&A video like I already mentioned in the updates before the actual episode started. The Q&A video for Dalek 44 is postponed until I get the footage from him. But in the next episode, I will be doing another episode talking about Dalek 44's content. It's going to be a top 5 video, and it's going to involve this particular character from Second Co. That's right. That is right. That was a dumb outro. I'm so sorry.